and get started. If everyone can, I tried to mute everyone, but if everyone can mute themselves so it doesn't interfere, that would be awesome. I am going to share our screen, hopefully. Hold on 1 second. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see this. So our topic today, just shout out if you somehow can't see this. Our topic today is talking about social communication and talking about how we can promote social communication and really, in essence, looking at the shared experience and how we can get our kids to increase their engagement and increase their connection and social motivation. And I like to start, before we get into the communication piece, I really want to start big picture with what are we looking for within a social interaction. To me, a social interaction is not that our child can say hi or say thank you or walk up to someone and look them straight in the eye. Those are social scripts rather than a social experience and a shared experience. So what I say is, what we're going for and the skill, the ultimate skill we want our children to gain is a shared experience with you as a parent, with their sibling, and then also with peers of their own age and peers in the neighborhood and all of that. So my goal is not to teach the social scripts and not to teach our kids to look good when talking, but to actually have a connection and to use a broadband, use communication in a broadband way, not just have what we think might look good. So when we think about that, what makes communication work is really in a big broadband umbrella, and this is like a whole talk within itself, but I was trying to go as much away from theory and more to strategies. And I know theory is always really important, but when we're home with our kids for 24 hours a day for a whole lot of days, I feel like parents need the strategies. So I only bring in the theories to help you understand the mindset that I want us as parents to think about for our typical kids and for our kids with social challenges. We are trying to create a child who has problem-solving skills, who can think flexibly, and overall is thinking in a dynamic way over a static way. There's a lot of slides that I put in more of a theory talk around dynamic intelligence versus static intelligence, around what the difference is. But basically, static intelligence is the black and white thinking, and dynamic intelligence is really gray area thinking and thinking about a situation and how you can problem solve it, and how if plan A isn't working, how we move to plan B. But yet in a situation with high anxiety, a lot of unknowns, hence our life and our world today, a lot of us as adults, and trickles down very easily to our kids, move into more static thinking because it's easier, it feels better, and it is just essentially black and white. And I think as even from a work standpoint, I need to make lists. I need to understand what is the black and white answers to things before I can go big picture thinking, because everything is so unknown right now that I want to know what the specifics are to be able to think in a more dynamic way. So our kids, it is second nature, it is safe, and it is easy to think in a static way. But what we want to do and what we want to push our kids is to think dynamically, because in essence, all social interactions are dynamic in process and dynamic in thinking. If we just envision a child going to a playground, even if we have written the most amazing social story about you go to the playground, there's a sandbox, there's a slide, there's a swing, and here's what you can do there. It doesn't matter how we have prepped and all the visuals we have for that social story. If there are 13-year-olds in the sandbox, yet we prepped our child to go up and say, hi, can I play with you? It's not going to look the same when the 13-year-olds are sitting there, but yet the 4-year-olds are over at the swings. So in essence, our children, no matter how much black and white rules we have given them, have to think in a dynamic way of how they can approach a situation, problem solve a situation, assess the situation, and make meaning of it and move forward. I think it's important to understand when we think about language that social challenges in kids with basically a social challenge in general, but then more specifically for kids with a language processing delay, it is very well researched that kids with an autism diagnosis or a social challenge have a underconnectivity with their neural pathways between the information that is coming in and how they make meaning of that information. It doesn't really matter if they have a diagnosis or not, but kids that have difficulties with social challenges, it's really a social challenge that correlates to an information processing challenge where they're taking in information and it's getting flubbed up in the making meaning of it part. And so sometimes that comes out in a very static way. And sometimes if we help them and we help that process strengthen their dynamic thinking, we can teach them how to think in a more dynamic way. There are a couple ways I like to break down language. One is really thinking about declarative language versus imperative language. And then the next area is really thinking about language from a nonverbal social referencing type of language. So if we think about declarative language, and the best way to think about it is there is language that is declarative in nature and there's language that is imperative in nature. And declarative language is language that's intention is not direct. So if we go to, it might be easier to look at, if we go to imperative language, these are demands. We are explicitly saying to our child, put your shoes on, watch out for the puddle. We are giving them not a lot of problem solving to do in that moment. So these are, when we think about school, these are prompts. These are a lot of times when kids have a one-to-one aid or when we notice that kids are really prompt dependent, it's because someone is telling them what to do all the time. And I would say, as a mom of four, as a previous teacher and a school consultant, the world is made up of very prompt dependent people because it's easier. It makes a child or anyone go faster in the moment from A to B. But what it doesn't do is create any problem solving in the child. So if my child was going to go outside and I said, get your jacket, get your boots, get your umbrella because it's raining, that is great. We have gotten to the door and we have gotten outside. But what I have also done is created a 4-year-old that then becomes a 13-year-old that still isn't doing that natural problem solving of, okay, I'm at the door. I need to assess what the weather looks like. I need to assess what I need in that moment. So what we want to do is look at how we can declare a process over imperatively demands a task. And we did a lot of brainstorming with my teachers around what is the operational per se definition of declarative thinking. And it's really when we are saying something where there is not a where the intention, there's no intentionality to it in terms of we can't expect something to happen more than the child is going to think about what they need to do in that moment. So what would happen in that rain, getting ready to go outside in the rain situation is I'm going to go to the door. My child's going to come running because they're excited to go outside. And then I'm going to stand at the door with my umbrella, with my jacket and with my rain boots. And I'm going to look at myself and I'm going to say, I am ready to go outside. And then I'm going to look at my child and just be like, oh, I hope we can go outside soon. And then see if just with a very open-ended declarative statement, if they're going to look down and notice that they are either not in a jacket, not in their rain boots. And then if I want to get more specific to get them to problem solve more, I'm going to look at my rain boots and I'm going to say, I know my feet are not going to get wet outside. And then they're going to look down at their Crocs and realize, okay, mine are going to get wet. And what do I need to do in this moment to solve my problem? And that's really going back to that dynamic thinking of, if we are always telling our kids what to do, they aren't thinking about what they need to do in that moment. And then the next time it rains or the next time it snows, they're not thinking through what I need to do in this moment. We can have the visuals there for them, like we talked about in the last meeting, because that's going to help them run through what they could possibly need. But what I'm going to do is look down at my rain boots and maybe point to the shoes on the visual schedule to give them a cue of shoes, rain. Okay, what do I need to do? The more we allow them to problem solve, the more we are allowing them to think, create perspective taking of, okay, my mom said she looks ready, but she also said I wasn't ready. So what do I need to do in that moment? The easiest ways to think, the easiest when I talk to parents or teachers, and I would say teachers hands down have a much harder time with declarative language than parents do, because we as parents have a little bit more time to get out the door, to get moving. Teachers, for a lot of our kids that are in the public school and they have to move a mass of 20 kids, they're going to decree, so-and-so get in line, so-and-so get in line, so-and-so stop playing with that, get over here, which is okay, except none of those kids have looked around the room, read the room, and figure out what they need to do in that moment. What they've done is been told what to do. So essentially they're moving through the day with blinders on. Now that we're home with our kids more, what we want to do is create more of those nonverbal problem solving moments so that our kids are noticing and watching rather than just being told what to do. Just like if we sit down for dinner and one of the chairs is missing, guaranteed my child would just stand there and be like, I don't know what to do. Or like some of our kids at school that are a little bit younger might just go and sit in the kids. He knows it's the next kid's seat, but if his seat isn't there, he's going to sit in the next kid's seat. And then the next kid that comes over is going to not have a seat. What we want to do is create the problem solving and the noticing and analyzing the room in a nonverbal way so that they're making meaning of it and making sense of it. And like I was talking about previously with the information processing, the more we allow our kids to information process, the more we're helping them understand and communicate in a more broadband way. I showed this slide, this study, which I talk about all the time. It is showing what was supposed to be a study on depth perception for like 12 months old, 10 months old. And it's for crawling kids to see, would they notice where the perceived drop-off was, and would they crawl across or not crawl across based on the depth perception. What they realized was the parent was sitting across from the perceived cliff. And what would happen is the child would get to the perceived drop-off and look up to the parent. If the parent showed a pleasing, comfortable, content face, the child would crawl across. If the parent showed distress or scared faced or anxious face, the child would typically revert back to the starting point. They would not crawl across. So what's interesting about this study is it shows that at the young age of 12 months old, where you barely have any language, so much social communication has already occurred. You can see from, even if you're at the, like when we did go to the grocery store, when you are at the grocery store, when you are on an airplane, you catch the eye of like a 9-month-old, a 10-month-old who has no language, but they have the gleam in the eye. And all of a sudden you're making like silly faces and you're playing peekaboo with them and you're the one looking like the idiot, but they are laughing and you're engaging with them. And they said nothing to you, but they have created a social connection and they've created that social communication of, I want more of your attention, so I'm going to give you back that feedback so I get your attention. That is where language begins. And so many of our kids, if you were on the call last week, we had the like pizza pie of all of our kids' obstacles. So many kids, even at a very early age, come to this world with so many obstacles. Like if we just even look at the visual cliff, some of our kids would get distracted by the yellow and white tiles. Some of the kids would get distracted by the video person in the room. Some of the kids would get distracted by the air conditioner or things in the room. So then they're losing that social referencing moment, but it does not mean that it is not there. It means we need to strengthen it and we need to highlight it. So many people say, and it's like a huge like negative trigger to me is when a parent will come or a teacher will say, I just can't get this child eye contact. I try my hardest. I put their face to my face and I'm trying so hard to get their eye contact, but I can't get this child to maintain eye contact. And that's a lot teachers are, because there's so many like goals around eye contact. That is not a goal to me. The goal is not eye contact, because if a child is looking at you and they do not understand the intention of why they are looking at you, what you are creating is a robot that's not looking at you, but looking through you, because they see no meaning in why they're looking at your face. They're not crawling across a scary cliff to get information from you. They're looking at you because someone's told them to look at you and possibly fed them a reinforcer to look at you. But what we want to do is create the intentionality for the social communication and teach them that there is a reason to look at you. So before I show this video, so I do parent series with people at my school, and I did this, I just recreated this with my daughter, but I did a parent series where I made parents separate in the room, and every group had magnet tiles, and they had to build magnet tiles with a partner that they did not know. And the first time they had to build, there was a builder and like a conductor, like a person who was going to tell them what to do, a director. And so the director could only use words, and the builder couldn't talk, but just had to do whatever the director said to do. And then there was someone who was observing. So there was 3 people. And then it switched over to, okay, now we're going to rebuild something. And the director could not use any words at all, but had to get the builder to build something. And then the observer was observing that. And I had no idea, because I had never done it before, but I thought it would be interesting, because I had a hunch that just like our kids, the more that we use language, the less that kids are productively looking at us and noticing us and sharing in that engagement. And what parents came back with when we had a discussion around it was even more interesting than what I thought. Is it made them incredibly anxious to be directed by the other adult, because they had no say in it. They were not getting feedback because the person was just talking. And they didn't feel like they were part of the process. They just felt like they were a monkey having to do what the person was saying. When I took away the words of the director, the builder felt much more comfortable and much more engaged, because there was a feedback loop. There was a feedback loop between basically their nonverbal communication gave them that feedback loop and gave them the ability to understand their approval, disapproval, and were they connecting or were they not connecting. So I recreated this with my daughter, because one, I was curious of what would happen. So this is a video of me just using my words to get her to build with me. And what I want you to watch is how in the beginning, she is looking at me and she is excited. But what happens as we keep building is her eye contact, per se, her social referencing of me and my face and smiling with me decreases dramatically, because she has no reason, there's no intention of why she has to look at my face, because I'm giving her all the information verbally. So hopefully this video is. Okay, so Maren, we are going to make a tower together, and there's my dog. And I'm going to tell you which square to get, and then you get to make a tower, okay?
Okay.
All right, so get the blue one. And get the yellow one. You can make a tower however you want. You get to be the builder. I'm just showing you which piece to get. Oh, okay. Can you get the green one? Can you get the blue one? And now the red one. So now you can watch that her face is really not even looking at me. She is so task focused. Yeah, you have a plan. And now the yellow one. And red. And blue. So remember how little she's looking at me when I've given her no instructions on looking at me or not looking at me. Okay, so now this time I'm doing the same as I did with the parent seminar, and I'm taking away my words from her or from me, and notice how much more she's smiling. And I give her no prep. Like, I make my kids, you'll see a lot of videos, I make them do a lot of silly things, but I don't give them prep because then that's not fair. So watch how her face is looking at me, and her engagement is so much more dramatically, genuinely enjoying the interaction than it was previously.
Okay, so Maren, this time we're going to do it a little different. I am not going to use my words. And you are going to have to figure out which one I'm thinking about. It's like a magic challenge. Are you ready? Okay. Should I make space for you to put yours down?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying, whoa, it's tipping.
So in a second, you'll see that now I'm making her do some problem solving because I want to see how much she'll problem solve if I don't go with what she's expecting. And how much she'll try a plan A, plan B, plan C, and keep working with me. If it's called like productive uncertainty. Can she take a little bit of nonverbal uncertainty and problem solve? Now this one, I just get silly with her.
Happy birthday!
So the point a little bit of that was that, well, the big picture was the amount of engagement I got out of her when I didn't use my words versus the amount of engagement I got out of her when I did use my words is quite profound. And I actually expected, because I don't know, she will look at me a lot. I actually expected she would keep looking at me when I was using my words, but it was quite profound to see that she stopped looking at me because she had no reason to look at me when I was just funneling language at her. So I think it's important for us to think about, especially for our kids with language processing delays, with overall language delays. We are piping language at them all the time, and we're like this little inner ear for them. And it's so overwhelming that they have to shut down something. So they shut down looking at our face because there's nothing they need to gain from our face because we're constantly throwing language at them. So what I want to give you guys basically is lots of ways to increase your social communication, increase your productive uncertainty, which also then increases the problem solving that you can elicit in any given activity. This is something I made my kids do today because I thought so basically, I'm going to start in a second, but so basically I always talk about that it's fun to do nonverbal lunches and dinners. And I have so many slides from my school, but then as I was creating this, I'm like, well, this is completely pointless for all of you guys who are at home. So I basically just made my kids do lots of videos of things that I talk about that we do at school, but it doesn't resonate as well for you guys when there's 6 kids to 1 teacher, when it's just my family, since we're all home. So this video is my kids eating, but me setting it up that we're gonna have a nonverbal start to lunch, and they're gonna have to get what they need without using their language. And this is definitely, we don't do it all the time, so they are not like trained for this. Uh-oh, what just happened? Hold on.
Okay guys, we're gonna have a little bit silly lunch today. We're not gonna use our words. Are you guys ready to take your words away? Okay, I'm gonna take your words away, Julia. Zoop! I'm gonna take your words away, Mary.
So I give them a little bit of a heads up because
I still am gonna have
I
my
think
words for a couple
if I
minutes, so I
just
describe
randomly
lunch.
wasn't talking
We
at
have
all,
regular
it would
pasta
be weird.
and Annie's mac and cheese pasta. You guys have to let me know what you need to get your lunch.
And then I create a lot of little productive uncertainty where I don't give them exactly what they need. Like Marin wants that pasta, but I give her like 2 noodles, so she has to communicate what she wants to make. So just for all the picky eaters, she's looking at the pasta to make sure there isn't 1 speck of Annie's cheese in there. That was what that was. And in fact, there was, which she told me after I turned the video camera off. So anyways, this is just a little, this keeps going and then my other daughter has to pick what she wants. But it's basically getting them to see that we don't always have to use language. And the amount of engagement, even my redheaded daughter who isn't participating is watching it, like watching the back and forth with my other daughter and I, because it's interesting. And otherwise, I'd have 2 kids that were crashing each other's words together, trying to interrupt each other. And this way, we're engaged in actually a much more productive engagement that typically happens at lunch where everyone's crashing each other's words together. So this is another one. I'll only show you a second so you don't get bored of the videos. But
challenge. You guys like challenges, and
this is them matching socks without
Julia
using
has some socks. Marin has some socks. You guys have to figure out which socks match each other, and then once you find the match, put them in the middle here. But here's the challenge. You cannot use your words, okay? So take your words away, zoop, take your words away, zoop, and go. Do you have them both in the picture?
Yeah. So the goal of this is well, one, it's gonna get our socks matched, but so one is to see that you can use this type of, you can create moments of enhancing social communication in everyday lifestyle type activities. I need the socks match. I'm going to get my kids to help me. And then there's an activity where they get to throw them in at the same time. But they can also see that they can communicate about matches without using their words. And that enhances their problem solving, their productive uncertainty, and their engagement with each other. And they're watching each other and learning from each other and doing the social dance that we want to create in our children. But with our world being so language-based, a lot of the social dance is lost for kids and for us as adults. There's so many people that even as adults now, I realize they're just so awkward and, you know, they're too close talkers. They don't know when to stop. They're not reading the room. That is why for our typical kids and for kids with social challenges, the more we can allow them to read the room, read each other's nonverbals, read the connection, we're creating more problem solving in them, and then they can make adjustments and basically adapt their actions accordingly without someone having to say, which is when they get to the 10th level of, oh, you're being so annoying. Because our kids, if we're enhancing their social communication, we're enhancing their ability to read another child and read their social cues. Let me go to, oh, this is a good one this is another lifestyle type one, where we are putting away the groceries and Marin is my helper. And rather than me telling her where to put things, I'm gonna show her with my face where to put the different groceries.
What?
I can't see Marin when you're like there.
Oh, that's okay.
And it's like there.
So this is, I give her things and she has no idea really, because she doesn't really put the groceries away. If it goes in the pantry, the refrigerator, this like drawer thing we have. So what my intention in this activity is that she's going to look to me for feedback of is she going to the right place? And then look to me for approval, disapproval of yes, it's the right place, no, it's not the right place. I need to try a plan B or a plan C. And what we're doing in this is when we go back to the dynamic intelligence, she's having to problem solve this situation and she's having to, it's so silly in a way, but it really is teaching her the life skills of nonverbal problem solving. So if I'm at a conference and I walk in the wrong door and it's like a bunch of people that are doing yoga and I thought I was going to one about something else, I'm not just going to walk in there. I'm going to look, assess the situation, look for feedback, make a different decision. And this is, as we can do this with enhancing the nonverbal problem solving skills. And make it fun, because the goal is with every social communication has to be built on social intention and motivation. So the more motivated she is to connect with me, the more she's going to keep going with my activity. This is like an outside one I was showing my school families, that you can make anything into a social referencing game. So my mom sent these silly airplanes, like dollar store airplanes, and my kids were outside playing with them. And so then I just turned it into a social referencing game. Okay, are you guys ready? Wherever my eyes show you is where which cone you're aiming for. I show them with my eyes where ready? To shoot the airplane. Ooh. So there's like whatever, cones set up everywhere, and we just move around and they get to shoot the airplane, but I've also enhanced their social referencing skills. Before we go, I thought I would, for 1 second, show you, which is on a different slide, for 1 second show you just, I said I wasn't gonna get into all of my school slides, but I thought I would show you for 1 second how this can be done in a classroom, because I think, and honestly, it can be done anywhere. But I thought I would show you this.
Show how to make this, but I'm not.
This is a classroom setting of how you can create productive uncertainty and nonverbal communications. So they're making a suitcase. You have to look
to learn. Okay, here I go. If you're looking, you'll learn how to make a suitcase.
So the intention of the teacher is to have the kids watch, model, and problem solve how they can productively make the same suitcase without the teacher prompting.
Yellow.
Whoa, this paper's longer than I expected.
The other thing you see, which is really nice in kids, is when you don't use prompts, they don't use prompts either. He just made a great declarative comment. You hear the kids problem solving and using declarative language, because that's what the teachers are modeling. And that's what we as parents can model as well.
I did it.
So there's lots of redirection that needs to be given, but instead of saying, look at me, she's just giving little nonverbal noises, cues to get them to watch her.
Do it again, please. Open it, open it. Open it.
So there's one more splice of this same activity, but what I want to set up is the productive uncertainty that happens in this next video. The teacher has, first of all, she wants the glue, but she's not going to say to the kids that she needs the glue. She's going to have them watch and problem solve it. And these are so things you could do at home as well. But then when the child goes over to get the glue, there's only whatever 4 glues instead of 5 glues. So then they have to think about it as a group that, oh no, the teacher looks sad. What do we as a group need to do to solve this problem? And you'll see it is not a quick process, and it takes a lot of patience. And when I do school consulting and training my teachers and training parents, the most important thing is giving kids the processing time. So when we think about that information processing, where kids have a neuro under connectivity, so the taking in information and making meaning is a weak link. So think of it essentially like a conveyor belt, and we have to allow the kids time, however fast or slow their conveyor belt of processing is, we have to allow them that amount of time. And every time a parent or a teacher jumps in with another prompt of, I need some glue, or I need to do this, it basically thwarts that conveyor belt back into the restart mode. Whereas what we are doing, and what I train parents, teachers to do, is give them like 5 seconds, 10 seconds before you say anything else, even though it may be painful as a parent, but it allows them that time to process and think about what they need to do, because that's what's going to internalize and generalize, is that moment when they think. And like when my daughter couldn't figure out how to put the yellow thing on her head, that is the problem solving moment internalizing, so that at another time she gets that gut feeling of, wait, something is not right. I have to figure out what I need to do in this moment.
White, please. One white and one brown, please. One Miss Maggie. One white and one brown, please. One white and one brown. Brown, please. Brown, baby. Brown, baby. Brown, please.
Oh.
There's another teacher standing next to me, so that little guy's talking to.
Glue. Got it. Glue. Glue together. Glue together.
Aww.
She's showing them that they need glue. They're saying they need glue, but they're not yet. Now they're thinking, oh wait, we have to get the glue.
I can't reach. Oh.
So now the teacher doesn't have glue, and she's just waiting them out, giving them some reactions with her face, but not saying, guys, I need glue, or look at me, what do I need?
I'm already done with my stripes, of course. I'm gonna.
So I'll show you one more just fun video to, so this video is how you can create red light, green light into a nonverbal interaction where, and this is, you can do with your kids at home. It could be a parent and a child, and one parent is the red light, green light person. So it's basically the teacher using facial expressions to tell kids when to go and stop. So those were little examples, hopefully helpful, from giving you strategies of how you can incorporate language and incorporate social communication from the using declaratives over commands and demands, And the kind of the easiest thing around using declarative communication is using a I wonder, I notice, because that's showing what you're thinking about, and then it's highlighting to the child that they have to bring their 50 like reciprocal they have to bring that reciprocation back with you. If you notice it's wet outside, what do they need to do to adapt to their actions, their communication, what they're doing to align with what you're noticing? Or if I wonder what we should wear when it's so sunny out, and then they're going to think, oh, we should probably get a hat or sunglasses, instead of us saying, get your sunglasses, get your hat. I mean, we could do those things forever, but what we haven't done is create that ability for them to think and communicate. And like I was saying with the video, the more we declare and we talk about things without direct intention, the more our children start to notice things, and not always notice things without prompts, become more independent in their thinking, and then also use declarative communication and use a back and forth communication. Way back when I just did parent consulting a long time ago, I had a family who was very much in a behavioral program where the child was prompted constantly. And what they noticed was the child was constantly feeding back prompts where the child, like if it were me, I would say, like, what does Lauren want? Lauren wants a cookie. Like, I would do both the provider and the my comment, because language essentially meant nothing to the child except these feeds of what they heard and what they answered, but there was no social communication behind it. So we really talked about eliminating all of the prompts and just highlighting more declarative communication and highlighting more nonverbal communication. And what was really interesting for this family, and the child was like 3 at the time and was just emerging with more robust language, definitely had language, but was emerging with more of the social pragmatics around language. The child stopped talking for a little while, and it freaked the parents out. And what I said to them was, you know he has language. You know the language is there. He is trying to figure out what to do because you are not pulling for direct responses. You're not pulling for that black and white language, so he doesn't know what to do. And he has to re-jog his brain to think in a more dynamic way, and to think about, if we go outside and mom says, oh my gosh, the sky is so blue, there is no intentional response she is asking for. Previously, she would have gone outside and said, Will, what color is the sky? He would have said blue, and that would have made him think that they were connected, because that was what was connected. What he had to recalibrate and say, after mom said, wow, the sky is so pretty, it's so blue, then he has to make another comment that is thoughtful and purposeful. So it takes a little while to reconnect your brain in that way. So after a little while, he then went outside and mom would say, the sky looks beautiful. And he would say, Mommy, I see a bird. And so it's him, again, going back to that very first slide of experience sharing. The goal of communication, what it should be, is sharing your experience. And the more we use language not as a direct prompt to gain information, but as a way to share our experience, the more our kids are going to use language to share their experience and understand that language is very broadband and very much a way to connect, not just a way to share information. There is a study that looks at communication, and 20% of language is verbal when we're in an engaged conversation. 20% of language is verbal, and 80% of language is nonverbal. Hence why all this Zoom world for our kids is so very difficult. It doesn't matter if they have needs or if they're typical. We have now lost 80% of what we inherently know as language when we are just using verbal language all the time. So what happens for kids with language delays is we want to get language out of them. We're very focused on getting language. So we pull at language of, what color is this? What color is that? Because at least it's giving us something that makes us know that they have language.
It's so the same theme. It's nighttime.
What we want to do is help them learn that language can be about a shared experience and not just about information that they have to give us for that language. So we want to really increase that 80%, the nonverbal, the broadband communication, and give them back that piece that somehow gets lost for a lot of kids with challenges, and even typical kids that maybe just have like attention issues, distractibility, regulation issues. A lot of that nonverbal aspect gets lost because their body's so busy. Their body's moving all the time, and they're missing a lot of those nonverbal cues that other kids may gain. So going back to using declarative language, decreasing the amount you prompt and increasing your nonverbal communication allows your child to be a much more social communicator. There's a really good book that a friend of mine wrote, we trained together forever ago, that is, it's by Linda Murphy, and it is called Declarative Communication. She also wrote a really good article around using declarative communication and nonverbal problem solving. And it's a really great tool to get. She is a speech therapist, and she gives you a lot of great tools to use declarative communication and enhance that social communication with nonverbal problem solving as well. So now I can open it up. Also, like I said last night, if you put your email in the chat, I'm happy to share the presentation, the link for it. They're on a YouTube channel thing, but I can share the link to it so you can have the videos as well. But I'm happy to take questions or thoughts that anybody has as well.